All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Old State Saloon. We have tonight, is this mic on? You can hear me okay? All right. Tonight we have Jordan Sather with us, who will be coming up here in a minute. We're so glad you're all here. As we discussed prior, during this presentation, we need everybody who's here at Old State Saloon to be respectful and listen to the presentation that happens. I need this louder, I think. How about now? A little bit louder. All right, there we go, that's better. All right, so during the presentation tonight, we're expecting everybody in the room to give respect to our presenter, and then right after the presentation, we're gonna go to Q&A. The Q&A will be people who are here in our audience, but also people who are joining us live. And we have an audiences from YouTube and Rumble and X as we're broadcasting live tonight. I got a few announcements to go through. Right here at Old State Saloon on November 3rd, we're getting together for people who are in Eagle, which is the city we're in. We're getting together to have a discussion about the next day, which is Election Day, November 4th, for our local elections. Be here for that. We'll probably have a couple of the people who are running for office here, and then you can stand up and say why you're voting for who you're voting for, and hopefully get other people out there to vote. We do have coffee for veterans here all day, every day. It's free. So that's something that we've decided to provide for veterans here at Old State Saloon. If you know anybody, you can send them this way, and they can enjoy a free cup of coffee. And if you'd like to support that program, you certainly can at oldstatesaloon.com. We are open for breakfast now, if you're not aware, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Our breakfast is local, organic. A lot of it's made in-house, like that English muffin you're seeing on the screen. And we are all ages now, which I'm very happy to announce. We go to 21 and over after 8 p.m., but until 8 p.m., from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m., we are all ages. Bring your family. We are playing the Vandals and Boise State games this year. So when those come on, you can come on in here and watch those games. Like I said, you're going to be able to ask questions here. I'll come around with the microphone after Jordan's done, and you can stand up, introduce yourself, and ask the question. Or if you're not so bold, you can text the question into this phone number, which we will have up on the screen later. And this number is also for the folks who are out there watching live online. You can text your questions as well. Everybody who speaks at Old State Saloon has to be willing to take questions after their presentation. It's just one of our requirements. I'm going to read you this disclaimer. Our intent here, by the way, is to seek truth. And we're not saying, by coming here that this is something that is definitely true. We're saying basically, let's gather together in a real place and hear an idea, ask questions about it, and determine, sharpen our skills of discernment and determine, is something true about this, and is there something we should do about it? I think you're going to really enjoy tonight's topic on Q, what Q is, the whole idea is. I don't think you're going to walk away from it and be able to say that it doesn't actually exist and it's fake. It's very much a real thing. It's just a matter, is this thing a thing that's going to lead down a path of what's good, or is it something that's actually nefarious? I always tell people that when we're seeking truth, for me, this is the reason why I seek truth, is because I'm seeking Christ, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And if you don't know about that and what that means for your life, I'll be happy to talk to you about it. We can meet for coffee or beer or wine. Here's the disclaimer. The topics covered at tonight's Salooncast are meant to be a starting point for launching critical thinking, meaningful discussion, and potentially to be a catalyst for you to take action to help make this world a better place. Although much of what is presented may quite clearly be a bold truth in a weak world clouded in deception, the content covered is not meant to be something presented as being certainly true. The views and theories represented in tonight's presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, and beliefs of Old State Saloon, any affiliated sponsors, nor any of our company's employees, managers, stockholders, or owners. If you are easily offended, you may want to vacate the premises now. Some content you may deem to be inappropriate, unsettling, and or ultimately life-changing. This could also mess with the CIA programming that you have endured for decades. Viewer discretion is advised. So I was pleased to find out recently that our guest lives locally, grew up in the Washington area, and has now lived in Idaho for a while. And we're glad to have him here. We connected, and so this is a second event we've kind of done together, and there'll be many more in the future. Our goal is to have events where we're, again, seeking truth and sharing ideas. One thing with Jordan is that he was one of the early people who was really starting to report on and present truth out in the media, and then he gained a pretty big audience because he's pretty talented at the way he presents that truth. And then right as 2020 arrives, wouldn't you know it, they basically took everything from him, his audience, and everything because, why? They didn't want the truth to get out. They didn't want what he's reporting to get out. It's censorship, and it's evil, and we need to identify these places and people and entities that are trying to censor people and shine the light on that. The people who do speak out end up being targeted. They end up having, threats and things happen to them. So I think it's incumbent upon us is to come around those people and support them. Not all of us can be truth presenters that are out in front and digging and doing all these things. So the rest of us can come behind those people and support them. And so this gent tonight, I'm very glad to introduce as a new friend of mine, for him to come present to you on this topic. Would you please welcome Jordan Sather?
Audio good? Cool. I just want to say, they did chose the name of this talk to be The Truth About Q, so that is some good faith they had in me. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jordan Sather. I'm here to program you with CIA propaganda. And before we begin, I do want to thank Mark and the team here at Old State for being awesome and based enough to have a conversation like this. And I want to thank everybody out there watching live on the Badlands Media Rumble channel, my Rumble channel, my YouTube, since YouTube gave my channel back to me about a week ago, and on the Old State pages. So in this talk, we will discuss both what Q is, we'll discuss the what, where, when, why, and how, and we'll also discuss what Q is not, which might even be more important because there's been so much propaganda about Q from both the mainstream media and certain clickbait and or disinfo agents in the alternative media that have really poisoned the well and watered down the idea of Q. And I find that a lot of people's understanding, or what they think is their understanding of Q, doesn't necessarily come from reading the posts themselves, but from listening to either the media or influencers on the internet, and then they get this idea of what it is without understanding actually what the posts say. A little bit about my background, if you are unfamiliar with who I am or where I come from. Mark gave a little bit of a description where I was born. I did come here to Idaho a few years ago. Don't worry, I'm one of the good migrants. You don't have to worry about me. But I started doing the internet media thing about 9 years ago in January 2017. And the initial topics that I covered were political, and I was also interested in health. I do have a background in health from before I did the internet stuff, and then interested in suppressed technologies and the UFO topic and the like. So I talked about all those things on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel was and now is called Destroying the Illusion, and I was on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and wherever I could be. And then as Mark described, in 2020, right before the election, they took pretty much all my accounts down, not just social media, but PayPal and Patreon and MailChimp and Linktree and dozens of accounts. I've gotten a few of those back. I've made some alternate accounts on some of them, except Facebook. That's one I won't go back to. But yes, we are here and we are still trucking along. So let's get into this presentation on the truth about Q. If I can get this correct. All right. So, starting with the 16-year plan to destroy America. Let me just figure out how to get this. I don't know how. We'll just go with this. So the 16-year plan to destroy America, it was difficult for me to figure out how to introduce this conversation. Now, the thing about Q is that it is about 8 years old, and there is so much to cover in those 8 years that I could go on for days with this discussion to get all of the details. Thank you. And there's so many things I could not include in this because I'm making a very generalized conversation here about this topic. So to initiate it, to introduce it, it's very difficult to me to figure that out. But I figured that discussing the time frame around 2016 would be the best route to go. And the idea of the 16-year plan to destroy America was featured in Q's drops at one point, but it isn't even necessarily associated with Q, because if you just look at what was happening around 2016, it all makes sense. We were dealing with 8 years of Bush, then 8 years of Obama, and those 16 years themselves, this country was in really bad shape after those 8 years of Obama. And then they wanted 8 years of Hillary Clinton, which effectively would have absolutely destroyed not just this country, but this world. I mean, our 8 years of Obama, during the Obama years, they were installing rogue operators in different intelligence agencies and within the government. They were removing good guys from the government. They were funding terrorism, MS-13, ISIS. Yes, we did help ISIS a great deal. Leaking classified intel, military secrets, selling off special access programs, thanks Hillary Clinton, where'd those emails go? Nuclearizing North Korea and Iran. You could make an argument that we're CIA proxy states, cut military funding, weaken the NSA, and a whole lot more during the Obama years. And then they wanted Hillary. They desperately wanted Hillary to win in 2016. And if Hillary would have won, just imagine how bad things would have been. That COVID scamdemic would have been far, far worse, including much of everything else. China's rise would have not been countered by any means. China would have been the new sort of global superpower they were setting up while they were weakening America from within. The censorship would have been so much worse. The gutting of the military, the open borders that we're not so much dealing with anymore. We're dealing with the fallout from it, but the illegal migration would have been so much worse, and many other things. So this sets the stage for then the outsider to enter the viper's den. So to combat the plans of the New World Order, we had to have some outsider enter the political arena. And this outsider had to have money because they needed to not be able to be bought off by the political establishment. They had to be able to somewhat fund their own campaigns for the large part. And they had to have the street smarts to deal with the political game, because of how much corruption there is in Washington, D.C., and how you have to play that political game where a lot of people you might have to act like friends with, even though you despise their guts. There's some people where you can't publicly have a good relationship with them, even though behind the scenes you might. So you have to act like you hate their guts for the cameras. Meanwhile, there's deals getting made and friendly conversations having behind the scenes. So Trump was almost that perfect person. He had the street smarts from New York. He knew how to play the political game. He had the money and his own brand that they couldn't take from him, even though they've tried over the years. So President Trump was almost that perfect person to come in as the outsider and really shake things up. Some people don't like the way he speaks. They think, oh, he's not polished, he's not politically correct. I like Obama better because Obama speaks better. He's more happy to listen to. But in my opinion, I love listening to Trump. I love that he's not polished. He wasn't groomed like CIA Obama was, or these other people. He speaks off the cuff. He doesn't need his teleprompter to talk. So, and he knows how to play that political game. He knows how to make deals deals in front of the cameras and deals behind the scenes, and he knows how to work the political game with his street smarts. So the first year, a lot of this talk is going to be in regards to Trump's first term, so there'll be some things I reference from back in the day. I'll do my best to kind of remind you of what happened back then, but that first year of Trump's first term was a mess. And I'll be honest, during 2016, I did not like Trump. I thought he was an Illuminati puppet just as much as I thought Hillary Clinton was an Illuminati puppet, so I just checked out of everything political. I didn't vote in 2016. I just checked out of everything. But I'll be honest, I was fully expecting Hillary Clinton to win. And when I woke up after the day of the election in 2016 and I saw that it was Trump, I thought, oh wow, that's a shocker. And I still wasn't sold on him until I saw two things. One of those things was the WikiLeaks emails, reading John Podesta's emails and seeing all the references to pizza and chicken and all the weird food code words in there. And I began, the wheels in my head started to turn. I figured, well, this is who we're dealing with here on the Democrat side of the aisle. And then it was the Russiagate scandal. When they tried framing Trump with all of the Russiagate stuff, that really kind of made me question as well, that the whole media establishment was starting to turn against him. And so that first year of Trump's first term was crazy. I mean, there was clearly corrupt people around him in his cabinet that, for whatever reason, he had to put in there, and all kinds of turnover as well. It was very difficult to follow and make sense of. And that brings us to October 6, 2017, a very curious statement that piqued my interest. When Trump was in the White House during a photo op with all of his top military advisors around him, and he made these very cryptic remarks in front of the cameras. He said, maybe this is the calm before the storm. And the press asked him, what storm, Mr. President? And he said, you'll find out. And when I heard this statement, I had been on YouTube for 8-9 months at this point, and in my years of researching conspiracies before I was ever even on YouTube, I had a general idea. I had I would say an understanding, but a belief, or I was open to believing that there was good guys in the government as well as bad, and the good guys were fighting the bad guys in some sort of silent or shadow civil war. So I was open to this idea, and when I heard this statement with all of Trump's top military advisors around him, it really kind of shocked me. Something in the back of my mind told me that something was coming. So I took to my YouTube channel, and I made this dumb whiteboard video. A lot of my early videos on YouTube were with this really ghetto whiteboard, but they were very easy to follow and very easy to make sense of. And on October 8th, in a video I titled Calm Before the Storm, just assessing what his statement might be, I said, what will a storm be? And my best guess at the time was some kind of data dump. And I was much younger. I was much, little ignorant of some things. I thought we would have some kind of official address that we never had or have had yet, and now I can understand why. But the data dump part, I figured that calm before the storm statement meant that we were going to get some kind of releases coming soon. And a few weeks later, lo and behold, the post known as Q arrived. Now, it wasn't any kind of official address. Years later, I understand why. There had to be plausible deniability. They had to do this through a back channel, but this, we could effectively say, was our data dump. And these posts began on 4chan. 4chan is an image board website. After a few months, they migrated to 8chan and a couple other effectively bulletin board type websites, image board websites. And we conglomerated the first posts onto large screen grabs, as you can see here. This is people just taking screenshots of all of Q's posts that were made to 4chan and making this big long graphic out of it. Eventually, websites like QAnon.pub and QAlerts.app, there's a few other websites as well, they were made by people out there as searchable databases to amalgamate there's been almost 5,000 Q posts so far. So you can go to those URLs to find Q's posts. But at the beginning, it was pretty difficult to find Q's posts. So we had to make graphics that look like this to follow along with all of the posts and read through them from number 1 to going through them chronologically and in order. And the posts were verified, so we know that all of these posts came from the same person because, from the same user, because these image board websites use something called a trip code, which is effectively a one-way encrypted password that allows someone's identity to be recognized without storing data about the user. And we'll talk in a moment why these websites were so important for them, whoever was a part of this Q operation, to utilize instead of going to something like Twitter or Facebook to post them. So October 28th, 2017, that was almost exactly 8 years ago. 8 years ago next week that the first Q posts happened. And I first came across Q's posts on about October 29th or 30th. I was never a 4chaner. I had never used any of those image board websites before this time, so it took me a couple days to come across them. I think I came across them on Twitter, if I can remember correctly, way back when. But when I came across these posts, something about them just felt different. I mean, throughout the years, we had what we called LARPers. LARP stands for live action role player, basically a faker. So we had LARPers or fakers come out claiming they were insiders from the FBI or insiders from the CIA, and they were making posts to 4chan, but they never made sense. They never checked out. Nothing ever came from their claims and what they were posting. So we had this over the months and years come out, but something was different about Q's posts. And then I'll talk in a moment about the proofs and how we were shown that these posts were coming from someone or some group with ties to the Trump administration. So when I came across these posts, I began making videos reporting on them in late October, early November. I am a little embarrassed to show this screenshot of my YouTube channel from about 8 years ago, but those were some of the earliest videos that I did about 8 years ago on Q's posts. As far as I know, I was the first person to make videos about Q's posts on the internet and on YouTube. And I knew nothing about streaming or not much about video editing, so I filmed these videos on my phone, live stream with a whiteboard behind me just to go over the drops. And YouTube at the time had not changed their algorithm to shadow ban anybody. It wasn't until about 2018 that YouTube really started fiddling with their algorithm to shadow ban people. So these videos were getting 100,000 views a day in November 2017. There was a lot of people that were coming across Q, wanting to learn about it, wanting to know more about it, and read the posts. So, I mean, at one point, I think I had a video on YouTube's trending page. It was pretty crazy at that point until YouTube changed the algorithm, and they actually banned my channel twice in 2018. I ended up getting it back, but they really started cracking down in 2018. So those first few months of Q's posts was the picture being painted, the picture of essentially this silent war, this shadow civil war that was going on within our government and within the intelligence agencies, and how this shadow civil war was pretty much what we could call white hats within the military and the intelligence agencies, namely the NSA, which some people may or may not want to believe, or they couldn't believe, but NSA being a Department of Defense intelligence branch going up against the black hats within the government, black hats being namely CIA and other agencies and other global groups. But the picture was being painted with these early Q posts, how it was pretty much military intelligence and NSA versus CIA and other sort of New World Order groups. And a lot of these early the first few months, these early Q posts also laid out a big picture for people to understand the history going back 100+ years, and the global circumstances, the geopolitical circumstances that we're dealing with. So that's one reason why these Q posts felt so real, is because they were talking about so many different things, from the Las Vegas shooting, which had just happened a month prior, to talking about or asking questions about the truth regarding 9/11, to the truth regarding New World Order groups and central banks and false flag shootings and so many different things, which we had never seen in any of these LARPers before, but that it was just so all-encompassing that it pinged an interest, it pinged a sense of maybe this is somebody on the inside with some kind of intel that is trying to feed some kind of information or questioning out to the public. Here was one post from November 1st, 2017, that essentially lays out this shadow civil war. Post number 23 that says, note, MI, military intelligence, has the same special access programs as the NSA, CIA, etc., as designated post 9/11. Why is this relevant? Who can be held hostage and controlled? CIA thinks its foreign offshore assets are strong enough to defend against the U.S. executive, not accounting for military use on domestic soil. Why does the Constitution explicitly grant this authority to the president, and what is it to prevent? They knew our agencies would grow in power so much that they could and can hold the executive hostage or engage with bad actors. Trump nominated someone new to direct every agency but one. And at that time frame in 2017, that was the NSA. So when Trump was elected and inaugurated in 2017, he removed every single three-letter agency head except Admiral Michael Rogers of the NSA. And there is good evidence to suggest that Admiral Michael Rogers was working with Trump against these black hat groups in the intelligence agencies. So the first few months of Q's posts were very enlightening and very interesting, sort of laying out the big picture perspective of everything. Now we get into the proofs. And I could go through hundreds and hundreds of what we call proofs that let us know that this is coming from the Trump administration. Some of them might seem tacky at first, but they sort of have to be tacky and subtle and vague. But really, when you think about it, they say a lot. And one of the first proofs that we got was this post right here from Q that was on Monday, the 6th of November, 2017, so just about a week into it. The post said, nothing is random, everything has meaning, +++. Only about 6 minutes later, 8 minutes later, we had a tweet from Trump that was talking about his visit to Japan, and then very oddly, at the end of his tweet, he writes +++. Completely out of place. What, was he just smashing his fat fingers on his phone and misspelled some things? You know, there's been some misspellings in Trump's tweets over the years, and the media will roast him for it like he's some kind of idiot. But if you have a grander perspective of things, a lot of those misspellings may have not really been misspellings. Now, what's the mathematical possibility? What's the coincidence here? Is it really even a coincidence that there was a +++, and then 8 minutes later, we get a +++ in a Trump tweet? That was one of the first ones that really piqued my interest. Another one that piqued my interest was the Saudi Arabian purge. If you guys remember that in 2017, when in Saudi Arabia there was a big sort of civil war going on in Saudi Arabia, and this big corruption and purge of some of the princes, the dirty princes like Al-Walid, what's his name? Al-Walid bin Talal, there in Saudi Arabia. Well, the thing is that Saudi Arabian purge happened on November 4th, 2017. 2 days earlier, on November 2nd, 2017, Q started making a lot of statements and questions about Saudi Arabia. For 2 days prior, there was post after post about Saudi Arabia, asking us questions about Saudi Arabia, regarding the corruption about it, regarding Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia. When Trump visited Saudi Arabia in 2017, they welcomed him with a sword dance, which is typically only reserved for royalty, that other visitors of Saudi Arabia, even heads of state, usually don't even get. Yet Trump got it. It's as if Trump was working with, I wouldn't call them good, but at least elements in Saudi Arabia that were sick of New World Order control. Somehow Q knew that, and 2 days later, the Saudi Arabian purge happened. What kind of coincidence is it in these posts that they were talking about Saudi Arabia before the corruption purge? Some more proofs. Again, some are tacky, but the tackiness is almost what makes them interesting. So in 2018, usually when a national sports team, whether it's baseball or collegiate team or a football national franchise, wins the national championship, they get invited to the White House. They give the president their jersey, and it has the number of the presidency on that jersey. Whether it's Clinton getting the 42, Bush getting the 43, Obama, 44th president, gets the jersey with the 44 on it. Yet, multiple sports teams in 2018, when they got invited to the White House for winning the championship, apparently Trump chose the number 17 for the jersey. And what's the 17th letter of the alphabet? Q. Curious. Coincidental. Here's another proof, our tippy-top proof. In January 2018, one of the posters, commenters on 8chan, image board website where Q was posting at the time, asked Q a question. Said maybe Q can work the phrase tip-top into the State of the Union as a shout-out to the board. Well, that phrase tip-top didn't get worked into the State of the Union, but right before Easter, Trump at the White House was speaking to the press and said, we keep it in tip-top shape. We call it sometimes tippy-top shape. Tip-top, tippy-top shape. Q then said, it was requested. Did you listen today? Some of them are kind of silly, but they're really not. Are they coincidences? No, not really. Very planned. Some more proofs. And these are all from the first few months. I'm not going to go into 2019, 2020, because again, there's hundreds of them. And there's dozens and dozens of posts that Q made where just a minute or two later, Trump would make a tweet. I don't have all the time to go through those, but here's a few more proofs. On December 9th, 2017, in one of Q's posts, they said, they wrote that quote, "We love our U.S. military on behalf of an entire nation. Thank you for your sacrifice and service." Q put that in quotations. And then, let's see, just a couple of hours later, right after the Army-Navy football game, Trump tweeted that exact phrase in his tweet. Another coincidence. Let's see, in the upper right here, we have at one point in December 2018, Air Force One took off and was over West Virginia, and the call sign they gave Air Force One, which is a designation they give to any aircraft that is in the air, Q0 was the call sign they gave Air Force One that day. 0 on a keypad is the plus sign, and in some of Q's posts, they were signed off as Q plus, which over the years we began to realize was a reference to Trump himself. So some of these Q posts, Trump might have even written himself if they were signed off as Q plus. That was our inference of that. And then Q0 as the call sign effectively means Q plus. At the bottom right, this sign says honk for Q. Trump's motorcade was passing, I don't exactly remember where this was at or what Trump's motorcade was going to, but there's a video of this sign being held up on the side of the road, honk for Q. And as Trump's motorcade passes, beep, beep, it honks. And I think this is my last more proofs slide. A few more here. Bottom left, we have Q posting a very weird photo. I know it's very small on the TV screen there, but essentially some of those autistic Anon brains on 8chan deciphered that that photo was actually taken in Air Force One. And it was an original photo, so if you put that photo into a reverse image search like TinEye, it doesn't come up with any searches, any hits, putting that into reverse image search. So it was a unique photo that had never been posted online before, posted by Q to 8chan, original photo, and it clearly looks like it's from Air Force One with the lampshade and the curtain. Top left, at one of Trump's rallies, this was in June 2018, as President Trump comes out onto the stage, you've got a gentleman there with a giant Q shirt on, and Trump just points right at him. And then this gentleman was given VIP access at the rally. Wow, interesting. And then on the right here is the Free Flynn proof, if you will. So an Anon in March 2018 replies to Q on 8chan, says Free Flynn, to which Q replies, done in 30. And then exactly 30 days later, a House Intelligence Committee report is released, effectively clearing Flynn's name, showing that FBI agents did not feel that Flynn lied. So somehow Q knew that in exactly 30 days, there would be a report released that cleared General Flynn of all the claims that he was colluding with Russia and all that nonsense. So this brings the conversation of predictions in. Sometimes you might hear that Q makes all these predictions, and what I would say to that is no, these are not predictions. They know what's going to happen because they have control or access to information. It's like, I was trying to come up with an analogy for this, and this might sound stupid because it is, but there's a million analogies I could make. I mean, say you're at home and you put a sign on the fridge that says, milk will be here at 7. And later in the day, delivery driver shows up and puts milk on the front porch. And then your wife or your partner thinks that you're some crystal ball magician because you knew that milk would show up at 7 o'clock. But no, you ordered that. You knew it was coming because you had access to that information. It's not a prediction. You just knew what was going on because you had the intel. It's not that Q is making predictions. It's that these posts were coming from some kind of insiders directly around Trump that had access to the intel. And then they knew what to say. Later on, some kind of news comes out that confirms that this is legit. Now I want to get to talking about Epstein for a moment, just because Epstein is in the news and there's this push going on, call it what you want, Operation PSYOP, who knows, but Epstein files, release the files, yada, yada, yada. With Q's posts, it was pretty fascinating because well before Epstein was arrested, pretty much the first 2 weeks of Q's drops, they were referencing Epstein's island, asking questions about it, getting us to think about what was really going on that island and what Epstein was really doing. It's just pretty fascinating that Q first referenced Jeffrey Epstein in November 2017. Then in that middle graphic, throughout 2018, Q was posting some publicly available photos, sharing some publicly available photos of Epstein's cohorts. And one of those cohorts was a woman by the name of Rachel Chandler. And Q is asking us some questions. Who is she? Follow friends. Friends lead to others. It's all open source. So it's pretty fascinating to me that have we seen Rachel Chandler's name in any mainstream media news reports? From any of these even alternative mainstream Epstein reporters? Have you seen Rachel Chandler's name really anywhere? This is the only place I have seen Rachel Chandler's name, the first place I saw Rachel Chandler's name, and since Some citizen journalists online have, of course, dug into her and found her social media accounts and figured out her story. Essentially, Rachel Chandler was a procurer for Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. But it's fascinating to me that this was essentially the first place that pretty much anybody had heard about who Rachel Chandler was and what she was doing, except maybe Jeffrey Epstein and his friends. And then the right graphic screenshot I have is Q basically saying, what high-profile elite people fund and provide Rachel with her photography studio? What is the studio used for? What's the studio really used for? Who has RC Rachel Chandler been pictured with? This goes far beyond spirit cooking models, referencing Maria Abramovich there. But yeah, who has Rachel Chandler been pictured with? My gosh, she's been pictured with almost everybody. Bill Clinton there. She's been pictured with Diddy, Eminem, and a whole lot of other people. Paris Hilton too, I believe. But in regards to Epstein, the point I want to make here is that it was pretty clear that Q knew something was going to go on with Epstein, and there was some kind of inside intel they had. And the questions they were asking in regards to Jeffrey Epstein's island: what is a temple? What occurs in a temple? Worship. Why is the temple on top of a mountain? How many levels might exist below the temple? They're referencing Jeffrey Epstein's island and the temple on it that the mainstream media called a gym. What is the significance of the colors, design, and symbol above the dome? Why is this relevant? Who are the puppet masters? Have the puppet masters traveled to this island? When, how often, and why? And then a quote from Vladimir Putin: the New World Order worships Satan. What is a cult? Q asks, who worships Satan? So my point here is that there are a lot of calls on the internet and even by Congress people, and it's curious to me that it's mostly the Democrat side of the aisle that are calling for the Epstein files to get released, even though, be careful what you wish for. Your friend Bill Clinton and others might be in those. But the right side of the aisle is also calling for the Epstein files to release. And I get it, right? I want disclosure of them, but at the same time, strategically, how might all that Epstein blackmail, which again, remember, they wanted Hillary Clinton to win. And if Hillary Clinton had won, Epstein never would have been arrested. Ghislaine Maxwell never would have been arrested. I mean, just think of these things. So a lot of blame is put on Trump over this Epstein saga, yet if Trump was never elected, we wouldn't have had these arrests. A lot of people out there wouldn't even know Epstein's name or who Ghislaine Maxwell is. What if that information, what if all of Epstein's blackmail that used to be in the hands of the globalists, the deep state, to blackmail people with, what if that intel is now in the hands of good guys in military intelligence? And they're using that blackmail now back against the bad actors to get them to do good things, if you will. That's something I think about sometimes. I have no idea, but I do think it's a possibility, and maybe one reason we haven't seen the release of the quote-unquote Epstein files. Also, NXIVM. In a lot of the discussions around Epstein, I failed to see the name NXIVM mentioned. And NXIVM was also a child abuse blackmail ring that was ran by some pretty wealthy, powerful people, that was also dismantled during Trump's first term. You guys remember when in November 2017 here, top left, when Trump was making a press conference and he took some real awkward sips of a Fiji water bottle? I know it was a long time ago, and it's a very obscure moment, but back in November 2017, Trump was taking questions from the press, giving a talk, I believe at the White House, and he took twice during his speech just really awkward sips of this Fiji water bottle. Now at that time, that was when we were first learning about the NXIVM sex cult and Keith Raniere and the Bronfman family, some of the Bronfmans being involved in it, and this NXIVM sex cult began to be reported on. So Trump takes some weird sips of a Fiji water bottle. Well, lo and behold, Claire Bronfman owns an island, or used to own an island, in Fiji. That island is called Wakaya Island. Privately owned island, privately owned, used to be by the Bronfmans. And lo and behold, the Bronfman family is very closely connected to the Epstein network through Les Wexner. Jeffrey Epstein's bankroller, basically. Les Wexner started some groups with one of the very wealthy Bronfmans, I think Charles Bronfman. So a lot of these different blackmail rings, sex cult rings, were dismantled during Trump's first term. And it could be that there's ongoing investigations into maybe some of Epstein's cohorts, or that what used to be blackmail material is still being used as blackmail material, just in the opposite way now. And a lot about Epstein and a lot about NXIVM we were learning from Q's posts. It was pretty clear they had some kind of inside intel. As Q mentioned here regarding NXIVM, how do the Rothschilds connect to the Bronfmans? Specifically, Linda Rothschild. Linda Rothschild is also closely connected to Epstein and Maxwell. And Linda Rothschild's also connected to the Bronfmans. There's some kind of company the Bronfmans were involved in with Linda Rothschild. So, just some things to think about in regards to Epstein and NXIVM I wanted to make a note of. Now let's get into some of the hows and whys and whos regarding Q. How was this PSYOP conducted? Well, we've already somewhat described they used image board websites, 4chan and 8chan, in order to remain anonymous for operational security. It was very important to use these anonymous image board websites. First, they used 4chan for a few months. 4chan apparently became insecure, so they moved to another one called 8chan. It was very important to remain anonymous, so they used these websites. And also, the helpful thing about these websites is there's some very genius thinkers on them. Very socially awkward, but their pattern recognition is incredible. So why not use these websites to remain anonymous, but to also utilize that tool of the hive mind researching abilities of the website users to ask some questions, make some posts, and then get them to research it. One of the best websites for researching, collective research mechanism. And then the drops were written Socratically with questions and somewhat roundabout, kind of vague statements to maintain plausible deniability. Very important. That plausible deniability, and to not break laws by revealing classified information. They couldn't just tell us the intel. They had to ask us questions, so we figured it out by ourselves. So it came organically. So thus, whoever was making those posts weren't breaking laws and revealing classified stuff, but it also, people learn better when they figure things out for themselves. And that hive mind that was able to research the breadcrumbs that were dropped for us. Or Q's posts, you could say, acted like a laser pointer just to focus people in a particular direction. Who conducted this PSYOP? Well, we have no idea. So the nature of compartmentalization offers security and means the amount of people who know about the full scope of this operation is very, very small. Very small. That's the nature of compartmentalization. We have no idea who exactly is or was a part of the operation other than President Trump, who would clearly have to greenlight this in some official capacity, official classified capacity, to initiate the operation, but we have no idea who really is a part of it. We have ideas, we have guesstimates. Maybe Dan Scavino, who's been Trump's right-hand man for years and years and years. Trump clearly trusts Dan Scavino. Maybe at some point Dan Scavino had the ability to make some posts through Q. There was likely a variety of writers of the drops, and as you read through them, as we followed them for years and years, the tonality of them kind of changed, and how they sounded coming from different writers. It was pretty clear, we think at least, there was different writers of them, but referencing one of the earliest Q posts here, they basically told us you can count the amount of people who have the full picture on two hands. Of those, less than 10 people, only 3 are non-military. So whoever knows the full scope of the quote-unquote less than 10 people, few of them are non-military, most are military. Why is this relevant? Game theory. Outside of a potential operator who has been dialed in with orders specific to his or her mission, nobody else has this information. Operators never divulge. And that compartmentalization is incredibly important when they're conducting an operation of this caliber, because they don't want, of course, leaks. Operational security, OPSEC, super important. Less than 10 people know the full scope. Who those less than 10 people are, we have no clue. And we might never know. We might never know. Now, why conduct this PSYOP? That's one thing I want to talk about here real quick, too. I keep writing PSYOP as these headers. Yes, Q's a PSYOP. A lot of people will say it's a PSYOP in a attacking sort of way, in a pejorative sort of way. It's a PSYOP. A PSYOP is a neutral term. A PSYOP doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's bad. A PSYOP, a psychological operation, really, we do those every day ourselves in a variety of ways. PSYOPs can be done with dark agendas, absolutely. And we've been dealing with those for decades, centuries, if not millennia as a population. But PSYOPs can also be ran by good people trying to do good things. Yes, Q is a PSYOP, clearly. It's a psychological operation. But my contention is that it was not done with a dark agenda. It was done with an agenda to inspire and catalyze the public to research and spread awareness, to help awaken the public. That was one of the goals of it, one of the goals. Of course, if they are making public posts, there's probably a few different objectives that are going to be layered within this operation. And one of those objectives as well, of course, if they're making these posts publicly, everybody is going to read them. Not just the public, but also the bad guys. So making public posts through this operation known as Q is also a useful avenue of counterintelligence. They can mix disinformation into the posts to throw the bad guys off, if you will. Because a lot of these posts were in 2017, 2018, there were investigations into the Russiagate, the FISAgate stuff going on, trying to figure out exactly how Obama and Hillary and John Brennan and Clapper and all of them were literally committing treason, trying to spy on Trump's campaign, but also whatever other objectives or operations they were trying to layer within this. It's a very useful avenue to put out some disinfo, which is why in reading Q's posts, you have to be very careful. There might be there might be somebody mentioned as a good guy within Q's posts when really they were a bad actor. And Trump or his team maybe wanted to get into their head and get cozy with that person. So through Q's posts, they try to make this person look good. Like at one point, Chris Wray, former FBI director Chris Wray, was mentioned as being a good guy. And then a couple years later, through Q's posts, Q referred to him as being a bad actor. And we were like, what the heck do we think? Well, those posts clearly aren't for us. They were for some people in Washington, D.C. So it was kind of tough to gauge who's good and who's bad through Q's posts, but that's kind of the point. And then it was used as a back channel to send messages to some operators in the field. There were a handful, maybe a couple dozen of Q's posts that were these just long stringers of characters that clearly weren't meant for us. We had no idea what they meant, but it's just a useful back channel outside of standard means to be able to relay messages and whatever keys or what have you to somebody out there. So they can layer things within Q's posts. Very helpful for them to conduct this PSYOP with. That brings us to August 2018 when Q effectively went mainstream. So first year, it was kind of very underground. The only people really talking about it were the citizen journalists on YouTube and Twitter. There was really no mainstream attention, but it had grown to a point where we could say millions of people were following it. I mean, there were dozens and dozens of us podcasters that were getting maybe 50 to 100,000 views of videos. So you combine all the people, all the followers and viewers, yeah, millions. In August 2018, Trump held a rally. And at this rally, somebody held up a sign that said, "We are Q," and that was right in front of the cameras. I mean, that photo there in the bottom left was shown everywhere. That was on Fox News. That was on pretty much all mainstream media channels. I think Trump even pointed at it. And it was clearly viral enough to a point where the mainstream media had to address it. And it was funny because some of these proofs became so overt, so obnoxious almost, that it was almost like Trump and his team were goading the mainstream media, like, come on, talk about it, come on. So in August 2018, it went mainstream, and August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, those days, almost every single mainstream media organization ran a hit piece. Because 90% of them are owned by the same, 5 corporations, and they all get their same news wires from the CIA anyway. So it's like the same news wire went out to all the controlled mainstream media. Here's your narratives. Here's what you're going to report on. Because attacking Q is effectively attacking Trump. I mean, they're one and the same. So President Trump being the mainstream media's #1 target at the time, he still is. Q at the time being the mainstream media's #2 target. And you can see it even trended on Twitter, 120,000 tweets. Trump rally attendee holds up sign linked to conspiracy theory. So that's when Q effectively went mainstream, was in August 2018. And it wasn't just the mainstream media that attacked Q, but a lot of people in the alternative media over the years have also attacked the idea and the movement of Q. And one of those people is Alex Jones. Not just Alex Jones and other InfoWars affiliates, but there's been a variety of podcasters that have, what they do is effectively just parrot the exact same talking points the mainstream media does. Alternative media influencers and brands began the same form of propagandized attacks against Q and the movement. And I don't know if they're useful idiots or controlled, or both, but their narratives were just trash. They were trash. Here's Alex Jones in 2018 referencing a mainstream media article for his attack on Q. Good job, Truth Seeker, referencing the mainstream media for your narratives. And the mainstream media's article, his headline says, "Here is every QAnon prediction that's failed to come true." Again, they're not really predictions, and given that there is disinformation clearly within the posts, maybe some of those quote-unquote predictions aren't meant to quote-unquote come true, but that's what they go on with. There's a long story I could go into with how full of crap Alex Jones is in regards to Q and how they tried to subvert the movement. They came out with their own insider in 2018 that they called Zach, their own Q as they called him. I think Alex Jones at one point even claimed he spoke on the phone with Q and a variety of things. It was like, no, dude. Jack Posobiec there as well. Again, at the time, he was an InfoWars affiliate. So My issue isn't so much with Alex Jones and Jack Posobiec, but it's with InfoWars as a whole. I mean, Alex Jones is probably just told what to say. I'm wondering who the producers are, who are the handlers of InfoWars itself. Because the best controlled opposition is 90% truth. It's the 10% that's not, that's questionable. Then you got to wonder, are they purposely misleading or do they not mean it? And in my opinion, I think some of the disinfo that comes from InfoWars is purposely misleading. Here's Jack Posobiec in 2018. He tweeted, well, seeing as QAnon was started by two guys that are friends of mine, wouldn't that make sense? Well, lo and behold, again, it's a long story, but one of those friends of Posobiec, he called Microchip. Microchip was the person that Jack Posobiec claimed started Q. But here's Microchip claiming I started Q. What? Jack Posobiec says Microchip and his cohorts dropped off on Q posts fairly early on. But wait, here's Microchip posting good argument by Jordan Sather that also exposes Sather as being behind the current QAnon. Make that make sense. It only makes sense if you don't think about it. I can confirm that I am not the writer of any of these posts on 4chan. I barely know how to use 4chan and 8chan. Yeah, there's more I could talk about with Jack Posobiec's nonsense regarding Q, but it wasn't just InfoWars. There was a variety of other streamers and alternative media. I mean, when it comes to the alternative media, a lot of the way they frame their propaganda is very sensationalized and story narrative driven, just like the mainstream media. They use the same tactics. It's all the same brainwashing tactics. Repeat, 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 repetition, framing the story, using character assassination and pejoratives to demean and dehumanize who you're going after. It's the same thing. But as we evolve from there, 2019, 2020, getting into that time frame, the posts kind of evolved and the whole movement evolved. So those first few months, the posts were sort of setting the stage, setting the story, and proofs were coming in a lot as well. But as we get into 2019, 2020, proofs weren't quite as necessary anymore because mathematical impossibility. Clearly, these Q posts were coming from the Trump administration. And Q more so became kind of like a cheerleader or quarterback, you could say, helping to inspire the movement, keep focus as well so we didn't get distracted by shiny objects and other things, and then help to garner attention. And what I mean by that is that a lot of citizen journalists out there they got Q'd, as we called it. So they got their tweets or their posts linked in Q drops. And a bunch of us streamers and podcasters, if we made a tweet that was relevant and important and had some kind of relevant information in it they wanted to highlight, we would get Q'd. So I had a few of my tweets Q'd, and a bunch of my colleagues as well had their posts Q'd. And then the post kind of evolved to be less on history and the global environment. And the best way I could word this would be more assistance on understanding current events. Because of course 2020 was the height of COVID. At the beginning of COVID, Q stopped posting for a couple of months, and I think that was to kind of gauge exactly what the heck was going on. I don't think the beginning of the COVID scamdemic, none of us really had an idea of what was going on. Well, some of us knew it was full of shit to begin with, but for a brief second, I thought there might have actually been a big bad virus and gotta, be scared of it. But then I realized, fake PCR tests, and where did those flu statistics go? And it's just a cough, and they're coming out with some giant psyop. But the post kind of evolved just to be different. Maybe there was a new writer. Maybe since the times were changing and we were a few years into it, there were different goals, different objectives. Plus, we were getting towards the election now. And since there was so much mainstream media attention and so many more millions of people reading these posts, they had to somewhat change what was going on. But 2019, 2020, it was still trucking along until, next slide. One thing I do want to mention first is that in 2019 and 2020, they did evolve the posts to speak to a more normie audience, I guess we could say. Just basically continuously hounding home the idea that it's not about left versus right. It's not about this gender versus this gender, this race versus this race, or this religion versus that religion. It's not about these things. It doesn't matter what religion you believe, what gender you are, what race you are, what political aisle you identify yourself as. Really what we're dealing with here is maybe a select few bloodline families, a couple hundred very powerful people at the hierarchy of world government. We're dealing with maybe a couple hundred people versus 8 billion. That's really what we're dealing with here. And they want us divided by race, religion, color, creed, what have you, just so we fight amongst ourselves and we don't deal with the actual issues and realize the actual issues at hand. So these posts kind of evolved into being more understanding of that. Unity is strength, unity is power. People are pawns in their sick game of global domination. You awake is their greatest fear. This is not about Republican versus Democrat. This is about preserving our way of life. If America falls, the world falls. Posts like this. And that brings us to October, December 2020, the times of the great censorship purge and when Q pretty much goes dark. So talking about the great censorship purge, I find it pretty hilarious that in Google's recent admittance that they were pressured to censor by the Biden administration, the worst of YouTube's censorship was before the Biden administration. It was right before the 2020 election when Trump was still in office. It was actually the day, probably the worst day of it all was a Thursday that was October 15th, 2020. And why I remember this day so clearly is that was the day the Hunter Biden laptop story dropped, which was also the day that YouTube censored probably, we don't know the official count, hundreds of channels at least, combined following tens of millions of subscribers over these hundreds of channels, all censored, and pretty much all, not all of them, but most of them were content creators reporting on Q's posts. I was one of them. I lost my 240,000 subscriber YouTube channel that day. Also lost my backup channel that had 50,000 subs, and a bunch of my colleagues and hundreds of people out there all lost their channels that same day. And that week was also the same week I lost Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them. Probably a combined 700, 800,000 followers that week. So that was right before the 2020 election. Definitely not election interference. And around that time, December 8th, so this was after election but pre-inauguration, our last provable Q drop was December 8th, 2020. There were a couple posts in 2022 that are debatable for reasons I won't get into because they're technical, but the last provable Q drop that we know via trip code was December 8th, 2020. Now, why did they stop posting then? Well, maybe because of because of Biden winning, biggest air quotes I could put right there. They knew that Joe Biden was effectively going to be inaugurated on January 20th, and they wanted to, maybe there was some kind of continuity of government plans that were being done, so it was just best to pause, freeze the Q operation, stop the posts for the time being because of the continuity of government they had to go into to maintained things during Joe Biden's 4 years. Anyway, lot to be said about that. But our last provable Q drop was December 8th, 2020. So the movement didn't stop, though. It continued, but it got real weird. It got real weird. With no Q's posts giving us a sense of direction, there were a lot of weirdos that hit the internet in 2021, man. I mean, I migrated to Rumble after YouTube. Telegram and Rumble, and then Trump eventually came out with True Social, so I migrated there too. But for a few years there, before Elon bought Twitter and I got my Twitter account back and all of that, we were relegated to the redheaded stepchildren platforms and just posting on Telegram and Rumble and True Social to our echo chambers. And when I saw essentially what the Q movement turned into, I created these weekly streams called Clickbait of the Week, because there were so many con artists that started inserting themselves into the Q movement, and they were never there when the posts were going on. They came out of nowhere. There was like dozens of them, and they all hung out in their little networks. They all did interviews with each other on their podcasts, and it was like this weird little circle jerk between all of them. And they promoted the absolute wackiest stuff. I mean, JFK Jr., right? Some people out there think that JFK Jr. is behind Q's posts, and that's all Q is JFK Jr. stuff. When we literally have a post from Q, when an anon asked Q, is JFK Jr. alive, and Q said no. Multiple times, Q reiterated, no, JFK Jr. is not alive, sorry. Yet, it's these clickbaiters, again, whether they're just grifters that descended upon the vacuum, since there was no Q posts anymore, they descended upon the movement just to grift, get some fame and money, or whether it was disinformation operations being done by the CIA, probably a bit of both in my opinion, they started injecting, they were poisoning the well. The idea of poisoning the well. Inject some nonsense into it so that the mainstream media and the alternative media can focus on that nonsense, and then people who listen to them will think that that is what the movement is about. That's exactly what the mainstream media and these alternative media detractors have been doing for years, is they focus on crap like JFK or adrenochrome. Fun fact, adrenochrome was never mentioned in Q's posts. Baby-eating Satanists was never mentioned in Q's posts, even though that's what a lot of people in alt media and mainstream media love to focus on. That was never mentioned in there. What else? Quantum financial systems, med beds, Nazara. I can go on and on. Military tribunals literally happening in Gitmo now. None of those were ever mentioned in Q's posts, which is why they never reference the source material. People who attack Q never reference the posts themselves. They never tell you a URL to go to read the post yourselves. What they do is they use the straw man tactic. The straw man tactic, those clickbaiters help set up the straw man with their fake clickbait narratives that the propagandists can focus on. And thus, which is like a psyop about a psyop, I guess. Here's a post from October 2020 from Q, effectively reiterating this whole point. There is Q, meaning the posts. There are anons, the people who decipher and report on the posts and research them. The QAnon thing is a straw man created to weaponize an attack. Media labeling as QAnon is a method, deliberate, to combine Q to comments, theories, and suggestions and statements made by injected clickbaiters, pretty much. What happens when you cannot attack the information? What happens when you can't attack the primary source material, Q's posts? You attack and typecast through the use of others. Not all anons are authentic. They're injected into the movement. Pretty much they're fake for the propagandists to attack. So in 2021, it got real weird. It's still real weird. It's still real weird. we don't get quite as much of the whole JFK Jr., Medved, Nazara stuff anymore. We definitely still get a little bit of it. And I'm more than happy to take questions to explain those subjects if any of you are wondering. But now we get weird decodes. Some of the decodes out there these days are pretty ridiculous, in my opinion. You know, it's the nature of conspiracy theory researching. It can make you a little bit schizophrenic at first, you know? It happened to me when I first started waking up in 2011, 2012 timeframe. Oh man, I think back to some of the crap I believed back then. I'm embarrassed. I thought the whole quantum financial Nazara system thing was real for a hot minute. I thought mass arrests were going to happen all of a sudden back in 2012, and boy was I wrong. But some of these decodes, people, I think, they might even be addicted to Q's posts. Maybe they're addicted to the highs they got during 2018, 2019 when Q was posting and it was so exciting and everything, that they just want to live in that. They want to live in that forever. So some people are still trying to connect the most random crap to Q's posts, like it's some sort of calm, or they're trying to decode, like this person here literally trying to decode the shoes that P. Diddy likes to wear. Diddy likes to wear Drake's designed Airlow high-top Jordan 12s, and the product code of that is 2262. Whoa! Oh, let's go to Q drop 2262. It must be some connect. Oh my gosh! I don't want what they're smoking, because that's the bad stuff. And here, the graphic on the right, I guess in a Fox News report a couple weeks ago, what does it say? Fox News said that the Department of Education seeks to lay off 465 workers. Oh, so we have to go look at Q post 465, and it must be some sort of calm. Like seriously, it gets whack. So these decodes as well have also poisoned the well of the movement, and people will see these and think that is representative of everybody that believes in Q. So for a few years, I've been going pretty hard against the clickbait narratives and the fake and lame decodes, and I have not made friends doing that. But what's interesting is that some people hate me for a couple of months, but they keep listening to me, and I've had numerous people come around. It takes probably a couple months. But then they come back and they say, you know what, you helped me out. Now I see the light, and I see how ridiculous some of these people and their narratives out there are. So, you know, it's the tough love angle. It's the things that need to be said angle. And kind of where we're at now is Trump continuing to, I guess we could say, hat tip Q on Truth Social. He's still doing it almost all the time. It's like every few weeks, Trump will go on a binge of retruthing things, and there'll be Q-related memes, or they'll have phrases that are very popular in the Q movement on them, like this meme here, the storm is coming, where we go on, we go all. Trump retruth that one. Here's this one that I think was just like 3 or 4 weeks ago. The world will soon understand nothing can stop what's coming. There's a big Q plus that was photoshopped right in Trump's hand there, and Trump straight up just posted that graphic, which I think that post, which Trump posted the URL to an X reply that was like a months old. It's like, how did Trump find that, or who on his team found that? A months old reply on X. Like, what a random post to dig up and just straight up post the URL to on Truth Social. But he did. And he's done this like dozens, if not hundreds of times on his Truth Social account. So, continuing to hat tip it. Could it be going somewhere? Could we see a resurgence of Q's drops again? I don't know. And one of my last slides here, a very influential individual who is just straight up basically saying Q is real. A gentleman by the name of Kirill Dmitriev. He's a Russian, and the mainstream media calls him Putin's Trump whisperer. This gentleman is the CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund. He's basically the leader of the sovereign wealth fund in Russia. He's a special envoy to Putin for investment and economic cooperation internationally. So I think back in 2017 during Trump's first campaign, he met with some individuals that were very close to Trump. I think he met with Eric Prince and Jared Kushner, and he seems to be, I just came across him a few weeks ago when he started kind of going viral for his posts about Q, but he seems to be a very well-connected, influential individual that flies under the radar. But here he is, straight up, talking about Trump reposting Q content. And here he is screenshotting Q's posts. This post about what if China, Russia, and others are coordinating with Trump to eliminate the New World Order. So Putin's special envoy for Russian investment, I mean, I think this guy might be a back channel between Putin and Trump. This gentleman, Kirill, is straight up posting Q screenshots about what if China, Russia, and others are coordinating with Trump to eliminate the New World Order. Interesting. And this screenshot was from October 2nd, which was, 3 weeks ago. That post from Q was from 8 years ago, but here he is screenshotting it 3 weeks ago. And that's an interesting idea to ruminate on. What if China, Russia, and Trump are all actually working together behind the scenes? Got to act like enemies for the cameras for pure optical purposes. But, what if, and not that all of China is good. The thing is, China's so big and there's so many different factions in it that certain factions could be much more evil than others. But what if Trump is deciding to work with certain factions in China for the betterment of humanity? And what if certain factions in China are trying to break away from the New World Order? Same thing with Putin. What if Putin's trying to work with the New World Order? What if Putin and Trump are working together to eliminate the deep state in some way? Interesting idea to ruminate on. So where are we now? Well, here's one of Q's posts from October 2020 that references 3 movies playing simultaneously. And those 3 movies, this is a Photoshop, but the names of these meme movies are Guardians of the Pedophiles, Panic in DC, and Fizagate. And it's pretty interesting that these 3 movies are sort of playing simultaneously in Washington, D.C. right now. I mean, Fizagate for sure, with Tulsi Gabbard in there, is declassing a bunch. James Comey just got indicted. FBI Director Kash Patel just mentioned on reporter John Solomon's show a few days ago that many more indictments are coming, some by the end of the year. Tulsi Gabbard is declassing a whole load of stuff about Fizagate, so I'm sure John Brennan and Obama and Hillary Clinton's buttholes are puckered right now. Panic in D.C. I mean, is the government shut down still? I can't even tell. Things seem to be going fine. But plenty of panic in D.C. and the Guardians of the Pedophiles. I mean, the whole Epstein narrative war that's going on right now, ultimately it works out for the better. People are waking up to the whole Epstein-Ghislaine blackmail ring, calling for the release of the files, and all right, works out for the better. Plenty of trafficking arrests too, especially since ICE is doing their thing. A lot of human trafficking and child abuse arrests are going up. Same thing during Trump's first term, but here it is going on again in Trump's second term. And will we see Q's posts again? No idea. I've gone back and forth over the last few years. Sometimes I think no, probably not. The movement's been so watered down by nonsense, and the well is too poisoned now that they can't bring it back. But then I'll switch to the other side and think to myself, well, there's so much nonsense out there. I mean, the thing is, the narrative war right now is really not the mainstream media. So many people have moved away from the mainstream media over the years that, geez, the average CNN primetime slot gets maybe a couple 100,000 views. I mean, barely anybody watches CNN anymore. The only places that CNN plays are airports and gyms. Really, the narrative war right now is moving to the alternative media, which is why I personally think that's where the deep state, the CIA or whoever, is really putting their energy into is disinformation and propaganda coming from their controlled assets in alternative media, on social media. So sometimes I think, yeah, maybe we will get Q's posts again so they can help us wade the waters of alternative media. Maybe Trump's first term was them helping us with mainstream media. Now we have to sort of figure out this new wild west of citizen journalism and alternative media, which is kind of a mess. I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I do find it interesting that a lot of people are getting their YouTube channels back. They're getting their accounts back. We're getting this special envoy from Putin just straight up talking about Q. Trump is still making these hat tips to Q on Truth Social. Kash Patel is the FBI director, and Kash Patel was referenced in Q's post back in 2018 when barely anybody knew who he was. So sometimes I do think it's quite possible we will see Q's posts again, but we might not. Maybe they're done, maybe they're not. But at the end of the day, the movement still lives on. The idea still lives on. It's still a very relevant topic to talk about because the mainstream media still works it into their propaganda pieces. And every so often, the alternative media still debates about it. You'll still see mentions on very relevant podcasts about it, and it still seems, at least to me, that it's such a contorted idea in people's minds because they're not reading the source material, or they're not listening to people who were there reporting on it during the early years. They're just listening either to the mainstream media or people like Alex Jones to tell them what to think about Q. People who, for whatever reason, are not telling the truth about it. So from someone who was there from the very first day, who made 1,000+ videos on the subject and has read every single post, that is at least my take on the truth about Q.
All right. All right. That was awesome. Thank you. You have a really good teaching style. We appreciate that.
Appreciate that, man.
So maybe we can come up with some other topics. You can come back and teach again.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you willing to go right now into Q&A, or do
Let's
you
do it.
need a break? Okay,
Yeah.
right on. So we have a bunch of questions texted in already from folks probably online, and then for folks in the room, you get priority. So when you raise your hand, I'll come over to you and you can ask a question. Or if you prefer not to stand up and ask the question, you can text the question to the number that's on the screen in the room here. But one question that we have here, let's see, it looks like a statement, not a question, but I'll read it. Here we go. Jordan is the OG. He always kept true to posts and debunked the grifters who were all over social media. Watched him long before Q. My question is, Jordan, can you clarify how Q aggregators worked and how most followers never saw the grifters or mainstream media's version of Q?
Can you say that one more time? How the aggregators worked?
Let's see. Can you clarify how Q aggregators worked and how most followers never saw the grifters or MSM's version of Q?
Two-part question. Aggregators worked. I'm assuming they're referencing those websites, like the aggregator websites, QAnon.pub, QAlerts.app. There used to be a really good one called QMap .pub, I think, but that website's down now. I don't exactly know how they work, but I'm guessing that they somehow just search the trip codes on the Chan websites, and whenever a post is made with that specific trip code, it automatically populates to the website, I'm assuming, if that's what they're referencing. What was the second part of the question?
And how most I don't understand this. They say how how most followers never saw the grifters or MSM's version of Q.
I don't know if I would agree with that, because I think pretty much everybody has seen the mainstream media's version of Q, and the people who, I guess, don't know the deeper aspects of it believe the mainstream media, and the people who do their own research and maybe think for themselves, they don't believe the mainstream media. There were a lot of folks that believed those clickbaiters a few years ago, like hundreds of thousands. They were getting hundreds of thousands of views a video, if not millions. So that's why I kind of felt the need to do those clickbait exposing content. So I don't know if I would agree with the premise of that question. I think a lot of people believed either the media or the clickbaiters, which is why I kind of took it to combat them.
And then the same person pointed out, don't forget Time Magazine listed Q as 100 top most influential people.
Oh yeah, they did. That's right. I forget what year that was. 2018 or 19 maybe, but yeah, Time Magazine wrote him into a piece.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sydney, and I'm not sure how naive this question is, but we were talking about that there are 10 people that are Q, 3 non-military. So is Trump the 11th to be Q plus, or is Trump included in the 10?
No, that's not a naive question. I think Q's post itself was quite vague. They just said less than 10. So don't really know, right? 3 non-military, which means could there be
Well, he could
5,
be military.
6, 7 military? Does and something I've thought about before, does Trump count as the non-military or as the military? Because he's the commander-in-chief of the military. So yeah, I don't know. It's vague, and I think it's purposely vague.
Come on, Jordan, you're supposed to tell me the answer.
I don't know the truth about Q. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd say Trump counts as military. So he's one of the 3.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're following definition of the president, right?
Right.
He's the commander-in-chief.
It's a good take.
All right, so here's a question that came in pretty early, one of the first questions. Quote unquote, save Israel for last. Please indulge us with your interpretation. This is Dennis in Sheboygan. Do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is.
All right.
Oh man, putting me on the spot with a very polarizing, controversial topic. I simply think that means because the country of Israel is such a controversial, polarizing topic, and with how much either blackmail or payoffs they have, control they have over many people, I wouldn't say all, but many people within our government, that's probably the most difficult country to get their influence out of America from. So I think that's what saving Israel for last meant. Granted, I think I see a lot of it clearly comes from shills, but I see a lot of attacks against Q on the internet that it's an Israeli psyop. But I think pretty clearly that Q, in part, one of their objectives was to combat Mossad and Israeli influence over the United States government. But I think that's what saving Israel for last meant, just because it's such a controversial, polarizing topic, and with how much control, and I don't like to say Israel itself, because it's not everybody in Israel, it's the corrupt elements of the Israeli government, with how much control they have through AIPAC, through their blackmail rings, Mossad. The thing about Mossad is it's very technologically driven, because the Israel military and intelligence agencies, they don't have the manpower. They're not going to invade any kind of countries. So that's why they have such a big tech sector. I believe a lot of these tech companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, the first foreign research and development centers they built were in Israel. Israel has a big tech center. Their military intelligence units are very tech driven, so they've got probably a lot of blackmail on people from hacking into them. It's probably just a very tough country to deal with because of because a lot of the political aspects of it. So I think that's what saving Israel for last meant. And of course, with what we're seeing right now, maybe we are at that last point, right? Peace deals that clearly certain elements of Israel don't want. It's really weird what's going on.
So Jordan, I had a question. You mentioned med beds, and then Donald Trump retruthed with regard to AI and med beds.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
A few weeks ago, Trump truthed a completely fake AI video, and the fake AI video was was a news report from, I think, Lara Trump on Fox News. Oh, the med beds are coming, and then an AI video of Trump saying, well, we're coming out with med bed cards and all that, and a couple-minute video that Trump posted to his True Social. I think a couple of things, either maybe an admin or an intern posted it or something, right? Because it was deleted the very next morning. Or gauging reaction from an audience for whatever reason, some kind of social experiment. Is it proof that med beds are real? I don't think so. Plus, what is a med bed, right? What's a freaking med bed? What does it mean? Who makes it? How does it work? It doesn't mean anything. The term med bed is such a vague, meaningless term. I don't discount the possibility of some kind of health technologies out there being suppressed, but the phrase med bed has been weaponized by grifters to sell narratives and get clicks and get engagement. It's even been used by some companies to sell $10,000 buckets. And literally, it's a bucket that they sell, $10,000. It'll help your biophotons, they claim. It's a med bed. You put this bucket under your bed, and it'll help your biophotons. They sell it for $11,000. Tesla Biohealing, I think, is the website, and they call it a med bed. Med bed doesn't mean anything. There's no patented product called a med bed. It's just a meaningless phrase, but it's been weaponized by grifters. So, I don't know why Trump made that post, or if it was even Trump that made that post, right? Could have been like an idiot intern that, or maybe somebody sent that post to Trump, but it was the wrong post, and Trump just hit send and oops, delete it the next morning or something. So who knows? But that's my personal take on it.
I have a few comments on that.
What are your comments on that?
So I know somebody personally here in Treasure Valley who she had a septic medical episode and has had a couple years of problems as a result and had tubes coming out of her for a while. And these tubes were pulled out, and she was told they're never going to heal. They're going to ooze, and you have to change these bandages forever, is what she was told by her big pharma doctors. And then she sought out somebody here in Treasure Valley, and if somebody needs it, I'll find out who it was. But it's somebody here who operates light therapy, okay, and not necessarily a med bed per se, but I think a lot of the ideas behind the med beds is some sort of light therapy. And this light therapy was used, and it totally healed one of her wounds that was never supposed to heal, and it did it in a few weeks. And now she doesn't have to use bandages anymore multiple times a day for that because of this unique light therapy thing that's being used. And so I think there are these very interesting technologies and things and vibrations and light and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure.
That will interact and heal the human body of certain problems that's being hidden from us. Although, I don't know anything about med beds and if those things are real or whatever, but I do think this ties into that, and Trump did talk about light therapy, if you recall, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And also,
that was the same
they
day he
accused
mentioned
him of talking.
disinfectant.
Yes, they
Yep.
accused
Chlorine
him.
dioxide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, Dr. Royal Rife was a doctor back in the 50s who was suppressed heavily by the FDA, and he developed basically a resonance device and found different frequencies that bacteria and viruses and cancer cells would die. I think he called it the MOR, the mortal oscillatory resonance or something. It was like specific frequencies that cancer cells would die at. And Dr. Royal Rife was suppressed, and his tech, who knows, maybe went into the black projects. But there's absolutely resonance technologies out there that can do those sorts of things. I don't discount that at all. But that device that person used has a name, it has an inventor, it has a way it works that can be described. And my contention is that the people on the internet that use the word med bed, they don't describe those things. Like med bed is effectively a meaningless phrase that I think we should stop using because there's no details behind who makes it, what it does, where you can get it, etc. So, yeah, no, I mean, I don't discount that at all.
First, thanks for coming out to Idaho. We appreciate it.
I live here, man. I just had to deal with Linder traffic to get here.
So having been awake for so long and seeing this stuff for so many years, losing your platforms, having your banking taken away, I'm sure it's cost you a lot of relationships in your personal life and all these hardships you've gone through. If you could go back, would you take the blue pill?
Hell no. No, I mean, I kind of described it during my talk, but it's not like, let's just put it this way. Taking the red pill isn't a one and done thing. I mean, you can start waking up to the world, but there's still going to be things you get wrong. There's plenty of stuff I got wrong when I first started waking up. There's even things I got wrong. I mean, when I got my YouTube channel back, I was scrolling through some of my old videos, and I was just cringing to myself, like, oh my God, I can't believe I believed that crap even 6 years ago. And I'm sure there's still stuff today I believe where 5-10 years down the road, I'm going to cringe at myself now for believing or thinking certain thoughts. I mean, our beliefs should change over time, at least some of them, maybe not all of them, but they should change. It's not like taking the red pill is a one and done event. Taking the red pill is something we should do every day, all the time. It's waking up is a continuous evolution throughout the course of our lives. So, yeah, if I could go back, there would be, red pills that I thought were red pills that were actually blue pills. I would try to knock some sense into myself, like slap myself upside the head and don't believe that crap, you idiot. But, yeah, no, not at all, man.
I think
Good-
people
good
really
question.
like the Q&A because a lot of people online are starting to send questions in, like
Cool.
a lot, like several. So we're gonna probably do a speed round here pretty soon. If you're in the room, you'll definitely get your question in. Don't worry. But as far as the online ones, I'll probably just tell you let's do speed round through them.
Sounds good.
Here's a person who sent in 7 questions just in one text. So I would just call this super speed round. You
All
ready?
right, I'll go quick.
Okay. Who is we, you and other Anons? I'm not sure why they're asking that. Who's we?
I guess when I say we, I mean those in 2017, 18, 19 that had podcasts and were reporting on Q's posts, like me, Praying Medic, X22, Red Pill 78, people like that.
All right. Why does Trump call the Epstein files a hoax? Because he's not on them, but the left tries to say he is?
Oh, I mean, rapid fire with questions like these. I think possibilities, number one, maybe some of those Epstein files could have had disinfo planted in them to frame Trump or others. Number two is that, I mean, clearly if my theory is correct and Epstein intel is being used back against the bad actors right now, it's not like Trump and his team can put that out. They need to keep that close to them. Maybe the deep state knows that, so that's why they're waging this pressure campaign. Release the files when they know Trump and his team doesn't want to release them.
What are sleepers?
agents undercover.
All right, Trump and JFK Jr. were friends, right?
Uh-huh.
Was Where We Go One, We Go All ever on the boards?
On the boards?
On
Yeah.
the 4chan. Yep.
I'm pretty sure in some Q posts they referenced Wig One Wigga.
Yeah. Was Follow the Cabal good or bad for the movement?
I would say generally positive. Generally.
Did the boards mention Podesta? Because isn't Podesta connected with Maria A?
Yes.
Did a Q post say something about saving Israel for last?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for all your research and work. Earlier you mentioned about white hats and the good military and the bad. If they're still there, why have they waited so long to rescue us? I look at the world through a biblical lens, and I think we are the white hats. We have to get up and save our country through prayer or just getting up and doing something. God don't want us leaning on a shovel and praying for a hole. We better start digging.
Yeah,
You know?
I think you answered your own question there, because that's exactly what I was going to say. It's up to us, right? I mean, I do believe there are good folks within government, intel world that are trying to do the right thing, but they can only do so much from their specific position. It's also up to us to get active in local elections, because I mean, we can focus on the national stage as much as we want, but if we don't deal with what's happening locally, nothing's going to change. We have to, it starts locally, and when it happens at that local level, then things expand as above nationally. So, no, yeah, I think you had the answer right there. We have to save ourselves, effectively. We have to do the work, whether it's with elections, pharmaceutical system, economically, whatever it may be.
From the 406 area code, have you considered becoming part of the White House press corps?
Shout out Montana. I think we did try, like myself and a few others that I know with decent platforms. I think we did try. They had like an open website where anybody could go apply, and I think I did back in the day, but I'm too crazy. I'm too edgy, I guess, at this point. They're only inviting like the Newsmaxers and One American News folks, which is fine. That means I'd have to go to D.C. and D.C.
Help me with this, because I voted for Trump last November. I regret that vote.
Interesting. How come?
What I've seen is I've seen him fill his cabinet with Zionists. He's supported Israel to the tune of $13 billion. He said nothing about the COVID vaccine, which is clearly a murderous weapon. He's done nothing to support the Palestinians, who are now 380,000 are dead. He continues to support Ukraine and the war against Russia. He's bombed Iran on behalf of Israel, possibly pulling us into World War III. I'd love to believe that there's white hats. I'd love to believe that. I don't.
Okay.
I mean, knowing all that, because what I said is fact. Filling his cabinet with Zionists, supporting Israel to $13 billion, that's all fact. So help me understand how he's a good guy.
I mean, these are your beliefs, and they're your beliefs. I'm not, I mean,
Those are facts. I just mentioned facts.
yeah, they're facts, but him given $13 billion, does that then lead to those beliefs that you have? You mentioned the COVID vaccine issue, which he has questioned the vaccines in some Truth Social posts. So maybe there's some things out there you haven't seen. RFK Jr., clearly, he has RFK Jr. in charge, who, in my opinion, is going to town on the pharmaceutical industry. He's doing a great job with MAHA and is slowly going after, well, actually, not even that slowly. But there's also a longer conversation we can have about Operation Warp Speed and all of that. But then the Ukraine issue, I mean, Trump's going to be meeting with Putin here in, I don't know, a week or two. And, okay, Trump is, well, he just met with Zelensky the other day, and Zelensky was begging for tomahawks, and Trump said no. I mean, there's deeper details about each of these issues, maybe, that could be seen and argued, I guess we could say. In terms of Israel, not everybody around Trump is a Zionist. There's a few. I'm not discounting that. But then we could ask the question, why, right? Could there be some reasoning as to why there is a pro-Israel person around Trump? And just because somebody is pro-Israel doesn't mean they're evil, you know? But
I disagree with that.
okay, that's fine. Are you a single issue thinker?
Mossad operation. We all know that, right?
What is?
So a foreign country
Yeah.
was controlling our.
No, but somebody could just be a useful idiot and like Israel for whatever reason, not be evil.
Okay, they're either blind or they're evil. Those are the
That's
two
fine.
choices if you support Israel.
But just because somebody is, say somebody is from Israel, does that make them evil?
60% of the Israeli population believe raping a Palestinian prisoner is a good thing.
Yeah, but that's 60%. That's not everybody.
Okay, so 60% of the population's evil.
Where is that statistic from?
That was, I don't know. I don't remember where I got that from.
Okay. Yeah, so, we always have to, question our own ideas and
Rioted though when they put IDF prisoners in. They put IDF prisoners detained and they rioted to free them. They rioted to free them who would rape Palestinian prisoners. They rioted.
yeah, no doubt. I'm not an Israel apologist here. There's clearly plenty of corruption in the Israeli government, but wasn't Jared Kushner just in Israel a few weeks ago when he brought up Netanyahu, who was booed by the crowd, or something like that? So not everybody in Israel is bad. It's not a black and white world, right? Not everybody in the government of any country is bad. There's definitely corruption. There's definitely people trying to do the right thing. There's a lot of people who are just blind, who don't really know what's going on because they're so compartmentalized. So, and you have your beliefs. I have my beliefs, and that's totally fine. But I think you can always look deeper into those beliefs and sort of question them. How did I form this belief? Is it correct or not? And,
All right, I have a couple comments. So you just say the word Israel and confusion just goes rampant, right? Because nobody even knows, what are we even talking about? When you say Israel, if you're a Christian, you think, okay, we're talking about Jews, people who are actually Jewish today. Some people think, well, we're talking about historical Jews. We're talking about a piece of land. We're talking about a government. It's very, very confusing.
very nuanced. It is very nuanced, yeah.
It's very confusing, and Satan really loves to operate inside confusion. Now, let's just assume Israel, the country, the government, the people, are doing bad things, controlling a lot of things in the world. Let's make that assumption. And a lot of it is tied in with the New World Order and leading us down this horrible, evil path. If you are the White Hats, if you are Trump and the White Hats and you're going to stop that from happening, you don't run for office and say, we're going to take down Israel, right? Because they basically, in this theory, run all of these things and control the power of all these things around the world. You cannot do that. You'll be eliminated.
You don't want to be Charlie Kirk.
Exactly. So you have to think, how long of a plan is this game? Okay, and I know we all get impatient for justice, but God doesn't live inside the same time frames that we live inside of, okay? And we have to have patience for him. And ultimately, we know how the story ends if you're a believer. And that's where I find comfort in that. When I'm like, oh, I want justice now. And if Trump is real, why don't we have justice? And so you have to think, okay, this guy, Trump, takes office this time after 4 years of potentially a continuation of government, which would be an entirely another presentation to talk about that. But after 4 years of a continuation of government, he takes office again publicly. And what does he do after he takes office? He does things that are on the surface, when you look at them, are Zionist or pro-Zionist. And when you look at things that he's doing that isn't really obvious, he's taking money and power away from things that are the evil part of Israel and Zionism that we're talking about. First thing he did is take away billions and billions of dollars with USAID, basically taking away all the woke programs from everything else. And that was a huge thing. Now, is that a move against Israel, quote unquote Israel? Is that a move against Israel? And some of the things that Jordan's talking about are those moves against Israel that aren't obviously against Israel. Because if you're if you need to run an undercover operation, you do things that aren't obvious at the beginning, right? And you need, if you're President Trump and the White Hats, you need the masses of people to figure this out and rise up. Otherwise, they're never going to believe you and follow you. If you just take office and say, Israel's evil, we're taking them down, they're gonna be like, what are you talking about? It's been 100 years of us supporting Israel. They're our greatest ally, repeating all of the talking points, right? So I would say, as annoying as it is, we have to be patient and observe and just keep seeking truth and what's right and watch what's happening. Lip syncing is one, or lip service is one thing, but actions and what kind of actions are taking place are another. And could these people that are quote unquote Zionists that are surrounding him in this term, could those people actually be people who are in on this and are no longer the Zionists that you're accusing them of being, but they're still pro a different kind of Israel, let's just say. I compare this to like when I question the United States government, CIA, anything regarding the United States, presidents, whatever. Nobody ever has a problem with it. But as soon as I question Mossad, I'm an anti-Semite. And that's just the way it is, right? Well, who controls all the information and who controls all the labels and they push that out into the social media. You're going to call anybody who does this, or this, you're going to call them an anti-Semite or Hitler or Nazi or whatever else, right? But it's backfiring. It's starting to backfire now. And people are finding out. And the noticing is happening, right? And it's happening under whose watch? Trump's. He can't be the guy that's obviously leading everybody, if this is all true, okay? And I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of arguments that it is. If this is all true, he can't be out there just blatantly saying things. He has to run for office taking the money from the Las Vegas people, the Shendelsons or whatever they're called, what are their names? And yeah, those people. He has to take their money and he has to meet with them because he has to appear like a normal person running for presidency if he's going to take them down. If you think that taking a kingpin drug dealer down in Los Angeles, California, that can take a couple years to take that person down. That's just one person running drugs in Los Angeles. It could be a multi-year operation. I know that because I was a police officer. It takes a long time. We're talking about taking the superpowers of the world down. How long does that take? I don't know. I'm not saying like all these things are for sure happening. I'm just saying like if it could be happening, and we have to have patience. That's all.
When Trump wished Ghislaine Maxwell well, I wish her well, people freaked out. But have you ever heard a New Yorker speak? They speak out both sides of their mouth. Wishing somebody well in New York speak is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And the way that Trump operates sometimes is that he'll make friends with somebody that he wants to expose and brings them close and plays nice with them just so the world will start talking about that person. That's the kind of like multi-dimensional chess that is sort of being played here. So, a couple of things.
So everything that Mark said is perfect. Just the easiest way to remember it is Trump keeps his friends close, his enemies closer.
Mm-hmm.
A question for you. In regards to the crazy decoders, do you have an opinion of Dave from X22 Report?
I haven't watched his content for a while. I love how consistent Dave is at X22. I mean, gosh, 1 to 2 videos a day for 12, 15 years. It's insane. I admire how consistent he is. But if you are making 1 to 2 videos every single day that are an hour plus long for that long, eventually by yourself, not having a production crew or anything, eventually they will become a little repetitive. So X22 is fantastic for somebody who might be a little new to all of this, and or maybe just wants something in the background to listen to while they fall asleep or do chores or something like that. But I just frankly haven't listened to his stuff in a couple of years, so I don't know what he's up to these days, but I highly, highly respect his work, and I think a lot of what he's done has been great.
He still sounded the same yesterday.
He did, yeah. Hi, it's Dave. Yeah.
All right, I just had a fun question, but first to my friend here, I have a lot of questions too, and I think we are not meant to just sit on one side and just sit on an opinion. I think we have to have discernment, and part of that means being willing to change your position on things as things show themselves. So Jesus said, you'll know basically by the fruit that it bears, right? So as you see something develop, you will see what it turns into. And I don't think we can always make that judgment early on. I have still questions about Trump, honestly, and some of them are the same things that you mentioned. But people say if you read the book, The Art of War, that's how Trump plays his game, right? So I will say that Revelation 2, verse 9, these are they that call themselves Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So we have to make the distinction between an evil, corrupt government and the Jewish people. There are a lot of beautiful Jews who have beautiful hearts, but they are under the auspices of very evil people who are running their government. So if the U.S. decides to go to war somewhere, I didn't make that decision. Don't say that I made that decision, right? Just because I live in this country. So same with them. Just because Netanyahu does something doesn't mean that they had a part in that decision. So I would say those are things we need to continue to remember, because our minds easily go into this black and white thinking, and the world is not black and white. And so I have to wrestle with these things, and I still, the verdict is still out on Trump. I came here because I'm convince me with Q, because I was such a Q, I would get on, these websites and read, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look, this is amazing. And then I started to say, okay, this seems like a psyop, but you're pointing out some really cool things, how this shifted over the years, and I think early on, this is a wild thing, but I read this thing, it was maybe 2017, 2018, about this, it was an interview on a radio show, and on this particular radio show, I think it was in the 90s, which maybe something made up, but this was again, this is almost 10 years ago. 2017 I read this, or 2018, and then someone taps in, and you have to have a code to get into this particular radio interview, and they hop on, and the guys, I wish I could give you the names, I can't remember now because it's been a little while, and he says, how did you get on here? And they said, we are Q, we know everything, we can get it, we have that ability. And in that interview, he asked some questions, and they say, there are 10, or they didn't say a specific number, they said that the same thing that's posted there. And interesting thing in that particular thing, it said that there's some who are not extraterrestrial, okay, whether or not that's made up or not. But here's my fun question. I have a buddy who, about 5 years ago, he was going on about, this particular earthquake that happened over here, that's because they're blowing up the deep underground military bases here, and I do believe they're dumbs, but what's your thoughts on that concept? Is that grifter, lingo, or is there something to that you feel actually has some basis in truth?
No, I mean, there's evidence out there going back since the 1950s and 60s that agencies of the government, military, Army Corps of Engineers, private corporations, they've built out fairly large underground structures in various places, right? So deep underground military bases, it's a thing. But a lot of the internet chatter over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, earthquake goes off, you'll see a bunch of posts, they're taking out a dumb, right? Based on what? So I think a lot of that chatter is probably fake, people making stuff up for engagement and clicks, but kind of same idea as the medbed. It's the internet chatter that gets weird, but the core issue I don't disagree with. I very much could believe, and I think there's evidence to suggest, but it's a lot of that internet chatter that gets overboard, right? So that'd be my answer to that.
So many questions coming in. You ready? Speed round. Jordan, how old were those posts that you used as grifter references? Respectfully, would you put all of your posts up to the timetable test? Weren't you on that guy's show?
Which guys?
Were you, what's his name, Alex Jones? Were you on his show?
No, I wasn't on Alex Jones' show in 2017. In late November, I was on an InfoWars program, but it was with Roger Stone and some like intern at InfoWars. I forget his name, Tyler or something. They invited me on the War Room podcast to talk about Q, which I did. I went on, but then there's a story. So rapid fire here, but basically I think they used me, InfoWars used me to introduce Q to their audiences, and then they took that and ran with their own narratives and started subverting the thing. So anyway, no, I mean, some of the crap I said about Q 7, 8 years ago, I'm like, oh God, I didn't, embarrassed about. So, but it's supposed to change, right? You get criticized for it and hopefully come to your senses and all that, so.
So not everything you said back then was perfectly right, is what you're saying.
100%. That is what I'm saying.
Right on. For people who never followed the boards or Q, would you advise them to invest the time to examine the full record of posts, or is the value of the operation time sensitive and not worth the time investment from this point going forward?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, I find myself going to those websites like Q Alerts every so often and just reading from first drop to last drop, and even get some new clarity going through the posts now and again. I mean, a lot of those posts were referencing things that happened in 2017, so a few of them you don't really understand or might not get the context of, but you could still gain clarity from reading them. I mean, why not? So, still helpful.
All right, in less than 20 seconds, if you believe in NESARA GESARA, if you don't believe in NESARA GESARA, do you believe we will get control of our financial system, and how?
Good question. One way is through Bitcoin, peer-to-peer decentralized cryptocurrency, not scam coins, but Bitcoin. Another way would be through some kind of asset-backed currency, whether it be precious metals or Bitcoin or a hybrid of the two backing paper dollars, but we got to get rid of the fiat systems. I do think we will, no doubt. I don't know exactly how, but long story with NESARA GESARA, but that's been a scam since the 90s.
How do you see us moving forward and exiting from the deep state?
Local action, and educating ourselves and really becoming self-reliant with our minds.
Yeah, so the more people focus locally, the less they're focused on the message that's being sent from.
Yeah, getting healthy, being our own doctor, getting active, eating right, getting involved in local elections, getting involved in local school boards, things like that.
Do you believe in gematria?
I mean, it's a thing, but what I believe in it, I think people take gematria way too far sometimes, a lot of the time.
This person says, I believe military tribunals are necessary due to the sheer volume of corruption. If you don't believe in that, how do you see justice being dealt with? Or do you believe in that? Are they making an assumption? You had mentioned that Q never talked about military tribunals. Do you think that they're actually happening, or are you saying they're not happening?
Well, there's been claims for years that military tribunals are going on in Gitmo right now, and people have already been executed, and that hospital ship that docked in New York during COVID was actually there to have military tribunals on, and yada, yada, yada. I'm saying I don't believe that. I don't know the future. Maybe some kind of tribunals will happen in the future, but how, based on what can you tell me that in 2020 a bunch of people got executed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and all the deep staters have been tribunaled, and what we're seeing now, we're all clones or body doubles? I mean, let's use reason here.
Here's somebody from the 865 area code. It is theorized that the 12 disciples wrote of Jesus as Q after Jesus' death to keep from persecution. Could Q be Jesus because he has come back?
That's a wild one. No.
Can you expand on how Q predicted McCain's death to the minute?
As I said, not necessarily a prediction because they somehow had intel, what was going on the inside, but I do think it's possible, going back to the whole tribunal thing, I do think it's possible with John McCain's treason and crimes that it was objectively more beneficial for them to possibly convict him behind the scenes and use cancer or use disease as his passing away as the public narrative as to why he's not here anymore. Meanwhile, something else happened behind the scenes. But yeah, Q didn't predict it. They knew what was going on, so they knew what to say.
918 area code. What do you think, quote, the truth won't be for everyone means?
That some of this stuff that I'm talking about and we're all believing just sounds too crazy to some of the normies out there. You know, basically the people of the No Kings protests. So they're the ones that A, are going to be in denial about all this and just never going to believe it. B, if they do start to believe it, move past the denial stage, that it's just going to be shocking for them. I mean, waking up to all this stuff, it's shocking at first. And you can go through a shock stage for months, if not a few years, of waking up to choosing to believe what's really going on in the world and waking up to it. So it's a doozy. And some people out there might not be ready. They may never be ready, unfortunately.
Encouragement from the 641. My husband and I have been watching you for years. Keep up the good work, Jordan. We appreciate the truth and your hard work exposing it. So happy you're back on YouTube. 619 area code, song by band Magic Sword in Q Post, and also band is from Boise. Fun synchronicity for tonight. Question, can you speculate about the military intel, people using exotic tech, not necessarily Looking Glass, but maybe AI that was available to military intelligence long before ChatGPT?
Yeah, it's quite possible. Some people think Q was using time travel technology. I don't believe it went that far. Maybe some kind of remote viewing tech is, I think, is maybe a possibility, or AI. You know, some kind of advanced AI that was a few years beyond what was publicly available in 2018, 2019. I'd be open to those ideas.
Similar question, maybe there's nothing else to add. Does Q time travel or have access to quantum computer? How can there be so many deltas?
I don't think they need quantum computer or time travel for that. I just think that Q makes a post about a thing on a day, and then years later, say Trump's team sees the Q post and they just formulate what's going on to become the delta. It's not that they knew in 2018 what was going to happen in 5 years. It's that now they see the drops in 2018 and they frame things in a way to make that delta hit, right? So it doesn't require time travel for that, just reading a website, seeing what they posted 5 years ago.
All right, a little bit off topic, but I wanted to ask your opinion. I don't know if you've looked into it much, but the FARA registration, Show Faith by Works LLC, it was an Israeli registration that was just opened on September 27th in California with Shiran Ravovich. But I wanted to know if you knew anything about that registration or if you had any inputs about the propagandizing in Christian churches through Israel propaganda.
Is that the one? I really don't know much about it, but the name rings a bell, like I saw it on social media just briefly, scrolling through Twitter maybe. Is that connected to the whole Netanyahu is trying to affect change in the minds of people here? So You know more about it than I do.
So that's the Clock Tower X LLC. So that's a new one that was from Trump's cabinet. So that's the guy who left, joined Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Israel. He's actually working with Iran Sheovich on this separate company that was in California. So they're kind of working together. One is more towards Clock Towers, the one that you're referencing. They're working towards social media specifically. But then the Show Faith by Works LLC is targeting Christian churches by bringing in a October 7th VR trailer to everything, to all churches. It lists every single church, every pastor, the congregation size, what big celebrity Christian social media influencers they're going to pay. One of them's already being paid $6.5 million on their first contract. So I didn't know if you had looked into it at all.
Oh, no, I haven't looked into that quite yet. So, yeah.
What are Jordan's thoughts on Jesus and the Bible? Q was about good versus evil.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was not raised in a Christian family. My parents basically just said, you go do your own thing. And when I was in high school, I was like straight up atheist. I was reading Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins. I was hardcore atheist. And then I went to college and I failed out of college, getting into the conspiracy stuff. And I moved away from the atheism and then got into the new agey stuff. And I did work in the new age realm and read books and research stuff for a few years. And then I realized how full of shit a lot of people are in the new age world. There's some good research and ideas, but a lot of the people are just like spiritually dead and full of shit. My own angle is that I like to research everything. So I have a few Bibles at home: Orthodox Bible, King James. I want to get one of those Ethiopian Bibles because it has a bunch of stuff in it. But I definitely am a believer in Jesus, no doubt. But I also like to research just different traditions and see what they're all trying to tell us and come to deeper truths with the common themes and archetypes of all of them. So that's where I'm at.
Good evening, awesome presentation. Could you share what you believe Q was referring to when he brings up ascension twice in post 4951?
I think that's one of those ones that I think is debatable, whether it's actually Q. Is that one of the 2022 posts?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that is a legitimate Q post. It's clearly a different writer, although I think it's debatable that those are actually Q's posts because you can see the ID on those is all zeros, which indicates that whoever posted that did so from the dark web, from my understanding. Did so from some Tor network. So I don't know. It could be an actual Q post. It might not be. But if it is, it clearly somebody else with different writing. Although just ascension in general, it might not even be a new agey term. Ascension just means moving up to the next level. So it could have been said with no baggage, I guess, associated with it.
Do you know anything about or have a comment about Trump being a master chess player?
Is he? Is he a grandmaster or something? I don't know. Interesting.
Thanks for coming, Jordan. I follow you on Telegram and
Cool.
repeatedly. Yeah, it's great for many years. Anyway, question about the 10 days of darkness, and I don't know what you think that may look like, or any timelines that you could see.
It might have already happened. So it's possible Q was referencing one point where they just stopped posting for 10 days, which was right after that, or not long after that. Or it could be referencing, but of course, multiple meanings could always exist for what they were talking about. It could mean something that's going to happen in the future with, I don't even know how to speculate on that one. I'm sorry, I can't really give you an answer whether it's, are they talking about the internet? Are they talking about the whole freaking grid? Are they talking about, I don't know. I can't even speculate on that. So
If there was no
We'll
such
see.
thing as Q, would there have been civil unrest in 2020? I think they're saying, would there have been far more civil unrest in 2020? Is it possible Q was there to keep the population in their seats? Essentially, could Q be a psyop to psyop us?
Oh yeah, I wanted to touch on that during my talk, but I may have briefly done it or forgotten. You often hear that Q was a psyop meant to pacify us and make us complacent. And with that, I fundamentally disagree because I saw a lot of people, dozens, hundreds of people get inspired by Q's post of the Q movement to either start podcasts, start doing internet citizen journalism, help wake people up, run for local office, run for their local school board, just do something. I saw so many people get off their ass because of the posts and the movement. Sure, maybe a few people became apathetic, but I don't think it was because of Q's posts. I think it was because of the clickbaiters out there telling them that tribunals were already going on and Biden's a clone, so you have nothing to worry about, just sit on your butt. It's not Q, it's those well poisoners that I would say are the real cause of any kind of apathy or complacency that's out there. Does that answer the question?
No idea. But
Okay.
I got the second to last question here, because there's nobody else in the room, right? We're good with everybody in the room, right? Okay, cool. Second to last question. This might spark us to have you back for another night. This question. How do you reconcile that Trump served 2 terms but said at Quantico to the generals that he was 45, 46, and 47?
Trump likes to joke. He likes to troll. But I do think that, the Badlands Media group I work with, John Harold, who founded Badlands Media, he became prominent a few years back for his devolution theories. And his idea was that during the years of Biden, there was a continuity of government plan in place whereby Biden wasn't really in control of things. And it's pretty obvious, but what a lot of people think a bad actor shadow deep state government was in control of, clearly there was some bad actor control of aspects of the Biden administration, but I think at least in some regards, some of those control mechanisms were decentralized away from the Biden White House to protect it, and basically like fail safes. So continuity of government, certain things were kept away from Biden White House because there's certain what are called PEADs, Presidential Emergency Action Documents, that Trump signed right before he left office in 2021 that have always been classified. There's been memorandums, national security directives. Trump signed a bunch of them that were classified right before he left. So it's quite possible that there was some continuity of government plans in place for those Biden years. And then when Trump came back, then it's game on again. So I think not that Trump was president during those years, but a lot of the powers that, say, Biden White House would normally have, they did not, because of these continuity of government plans. So I think Trump's just trolling a little bit, but clearly the Biden admin was not business as usual.
And he gave his final speech from a stage that had how many American flags behind him when he did the speech?
Was it 17?
17. And he flew away on Air Force One, the only president to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of weird stuff. Okay,
There's a lot of weird stuff.
Your last question is, if you had 1 minute and you were able to address everybody in the country and they were forced to listen to you, Jordan Sather, for 1 minute, look in this camera and let everybody know what you would have them know right now, where we are in history based off of your knowledge.
Bro, you gotta give me some time to write that though. I mean, come on, you gotta give me a teleprompter and, oh God. Can I get some time to think about that? I just think where we are as a civilization in human history, we're at a point where we have a choice to make, and that choice is between either serving ourselves or serving other people and serving humanity. It's your choice to educate yourself or to let yourself be brainwashed. It's your choice to make yourself healthier and make the right choices to do what you need for your own development, for your own health, or you can outsource your body and your mind to some other authority. You know, self-reliance is the most important thing, whether it's self-reliance with our health, with our minds, with our education, with how our children are raised. And it's more important than ever to take responsibility and accountability for who we are and what we do. We can't outsource our thinking to media corporations or educational institutions that have been compromised and corrupted. We can no longer outsource our health to a pharmaceutical industry that's clearly corrupted as well. And we can't stay stupid and stay ignorant about what's going on in our local government and local communities. It's important to at least know about what's going on politically and not just think it's dramatic. Too many people want to run away from what they think is negative and what they think is dramatic, but deal with it. The world is dramatic. Negativity is just a perspective, and we need to deal with what makes us uncomfortable.
Awesome. Thank you very much. A lot of other questions have come in. Would you agree on maybe do a podcast and I'll send all these to you? Would you answer them on a future podcast?
100%.
Awesome. Thank you. So if you see this and you want to send another question in to Jordan, we will forward it to him and he'll address it on another podcast. We certainly appreciate you being here tonight. Everybody go follow Jordan on all the everything so you can be informed. And we're thankful to have him locally, and we'll do more in the future. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We'll be open till midnight, so stick around, have a conversation, meet Jordan, and we'll see you back here next time. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, guys.